Okay, so we're recording. Can you guys all hear me? This is, what is today? December 9th, one of our last building query calls for 2019 and the decade, with B5 out on some minor paternity leave. So I think we'll try to keep this call light unless you guys have sort of big things you want to share with each other and the world. But I think in advance of what is likely to be Qri Desktop 030 coming out in the next who knows what. We wanted to sort of demo some of the front end paint work, as well as some new features that we've kind of worked on for Query Desktop. And I believe Chris has very graciously offered to drive for that. Cool. Take it over. Okay.
Okay, so I just upgraded macOS to whatever the latest one is, and now it's I have to like explicitly give permission for Zoom, and it says to do that I have to stop Zoom. So I will be right back.
Okay.
Wait, did that work? Can you see my screen?
I see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then let me close. Oh, you're seeing my bottom screen. Okay, hang on just a moment. Come on, come on. All right, do we see Query Desktop? Okay, so, sorry, I think, can everyone else mute in the room? Am I seeing it? I guess yeah, okay, cool. So this is the new user interface designs for Query Desktop. So Brendan a couple weeks ago, I guess, maybe 3 weeks ago, locked himself in a room for the weekend and came up with some interesting layouts to basically modify what we had going, which was a little more wireframey, and give it a little more comfortable look and feel, consistent color schemes, and that sort of thing. So what you're looking at here is the collection view, which used to be called datasets view. So now we're beginning a collection. You can see we've got different datasets here. I can hover each one and it will highlight, and then this is how I switch datasets. So if I want to switch to this little median income dataset, you'll see when I clicked that the main pane is now highlighted up here as dataset view. And I can go back to collection view to switch to another dataset. And then once I click on it, it brings me back to dataset view and starts loading the content of that dataset. And you're seeing, oh, there we go. That one's 100,000 rows, so that one takes a little bit longer to actually get stuff on the screen. You can see the flow, and we've also got the keyboard shortcuts still, so you can do Command 1, Command 2, go back and forth. So I think this is a lot more seamless now. You can still filter for data sets, so I can just start typing. It's kind of a no frills local search. It's not really doing like an intelligent search. It's just kind of doing string matching, but it can still filter out the data sets that you're interested in. If I want to search for the word clean, for example, I've got one that matches. So yeah, that's that. And then inside the dataset view, we've got this nice little history timeline. So instead of just kind of listing commits like we did before, we got a nice little visual indicator that they're kind of a sequence. Kind of looks like a subway map, which is kind of neat. And then in status view, so the same thing applies, but if I update the README, actually I should talk about this. READMEs are new. So now you can add READMEs. I can say this is my data set as an H1, and I can just say, here are some details, and you'll see as I started typing, the green light lit up. So my status is now sort of tracking these changes. This README is, because this is checked out to the file system, this README is actually a markdown file on my file system. So as I make changes in the UI here, you'll see that they are actually present in this markdown file. So I could also make those changes here if I'm more comfortable in a text editor. So yeah, I can commit these changes. So here's what the commit view looks like. So we kind of got rid of the commit form, which was down here on in the sidebar tab, and turned it into its own kind of proper component level thing. So the idea is that we could start writing a commit message here. We can leave it behind and say, wait, I'm not ready to commit yet. I can make some more changes to my metadata. And I can go back, and my commit message is still kind of waiting there for me. So I've got an added file, I've got one modified file, one modified component. I can hit the commit, and then we should see 3 instead of 2 over here in the history. So I can, I'm looking at this one from 4 days ago, and then I can compare it to just a few seconds ago when I added meta. Actually, I should have added a readme, didn't I? Okay, so let's see what happened there. So another really fun thing that we can do now, which we couldn't before, is rename. Is now built into the UI. So if I click on the dataset, so it's inside dataset view, but the name here is actually clickable. So if I click that, you'll see I get a nice little edit in place user interface. So I can modify this and just say Pluto demo dataset. And if I hit enter, I get a little toast there. It says dataset is renamed. So this is very easy. If I go back to my list, you'll see that the name was changing here as well. So it's kind of pretty intuitive, very seamless. If I try and type in things that are invalid, it'll start yelling at me and say, you can't do capital letters, can't do spaces, can't do exclamation points. So it will prevent me from trying to commit a name change that's invalid. So that's a fun new feature. So you can just kind of click there and tab off of it. It'll do what you expect it to do. And then last but not least, we're working on right now, not actually even in master yet, but it's a sort of improved import pipeline, right? So I think we had already had some basic drag and drop working in previous iterations, but I've got basically what we want to happen here is you drag in a CSV file or any file that is compatible with Qri. We're going to give you some feedback that there's something happening because the import could take, we were timing it this morning, so a 82 megabyte import, which was like 100,000 rows of data that I have on my machine, was taking about 17 seconds. And then for just at basically the same rate, like a 300 megabyte file takes about a minute to import. So we give you some feedback on that, and then once it's imported, we auto name it for you. We do an automatic commit, so you already have that point in history saved. And then we also just bring up the data set so you can see it. So we want kind of a seamless flow from file on my machine to be looking at the table inside Qri, ready to either start modifying it or exploring it. So I'm going to take this 10,000 row CSV and import it. So I drop that in. You see a nice little loading bar at the bottom, and then as soon as that's done, thank you.
I unmuted just because I want to make sure my clap was audible.
So yeah, I didn't touch anything else. So once I dropped that file in, we saw the spinner, and then now it's brought it up. So this is the file. I could just quickly rename it here. If I don't like the auto name, it just named it based off of the file name. So I can get rid of this CSV and just call it the 19B1 or whatever, hit enter on that. And yeah, I'm ready to start exploring this data set, but I've already got one commit good to go. So if you notice when I go over here to status, it's going to say this is unlinked. So we also made the decision to not actually link to the file system. We're calling this checkout now. So we should be changing the language in the UI a little bit around this. But basically because that's, we want that to be another sort of conscious step that you make to say, okay, I'm ready to start working on this as opposed to just viewing it. You can actually, when you're here, you can actually click on these guys and see the column stats even in the history mode. I can make that a little wider if I want to. So I'm just kind of reviewing this point in history, but I can go through and see what all the stats are for these different columns. And then it's, if I were to make some changes and do a commit, basically I get the same view. But right now that's not enabled until I actually do a link and say, where do you want to put these files? So we kind of detach that from the import process, and I think that'll make for, it's a little easier to just get started, and then there'll be a slight learning curve and you have to figure out what it's doing to the file system, but we don't just throw that on the user. So, I think that's my demo, unless I left anything out that's burning right now. I
don't know, as a team member, I know I'm very biased here, but to whatever extent I represent some users, very pleased that something we talked about long ago in terms of dragging and dropping, auto-generating a commit, just really shrinking the time from having a file to doing something or learning something about it. I think those have been like big successes. I also like, just in general, our format for demoing, not necessarily just walking through exactly what's new, so that if someone watches this for the first time, they get to see us. In almost every demo, we've uploaded a data set. We've checked out, now that the comp stats are here, we've checked that out. We checked out the README. So I sort of recommend we do it kind of very similar each time. It was really great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the new forecasting. It's pretty awesome.
We don't have to do this on the call per se, but any strong opinions about when we should cut this release? I think we might have talked about it this morning, but for our audience here.
I think that we should try and get it this week. I think we'll be pretty close. We just have a little more cleanup in the front end UI.
Yeah, there's definitely some fixes that should probably try and get in. I'm gonna vote like Thursday.
Cool. Great. Anything else on the building we need to talk about? All right, wonderful. Got a tight 12 minutes. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and we'll see either some of you on the using query call or building query call in 2 weeks, last of the year. All right. See y'all.